This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joar.
Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joar, and today is Tuesday, May 21st, 2019. It's Honor 20 Pro Day, and my guest is no other than the awesome Joshua Vergara. Hi, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Greetings, or rather, what is a greeting from London? Greetings, I guess, just from London.
Greetings and salutations from London.
I think Cheerio is not the greeting, right? Cheerio is like what you say when you leave, right?
That's right. It's more have some cereal. I'm leaving now. Cheerio.
Exactly.
I'm such a dork. Thanks for being on the show, Josh. I know I'm in San Francisco, you're in London, but I was super excited because we both got the Honor 20 Pro to play with a little bit ahead of the launch that happened today. You were there for the launch. How did it go? How was it?
Well, the launch was fine. I will say, just sort of like from a personal, like a comfort standpoint, for whatever reason, today the weather decided to like open up. So the sun was out and it was beaming all over the place. For some reason though, like it's as if nobody at the venue knew how to like turn the dial to the left. So like it was scorching hot inside.
Oh, boy.
So it was a little bit uncomfortable, but overall it was a good presentation. What I found interesting about it, and I guess some people might have watched the live stream, was that they just had, I'm blanking on his name, but he was a CEO, obviously, of Honor. He did the entire presentation, and it was not the longest presentation, but I found it interesting that he did the entirety, like not even an extra person coming up to give extra information on a specific aspect or anything like that. It was all him the entire time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Overall, it was really good. I mean, I kind of like where Honor is going right now with the whole... I don't remember if you were there, Miriam, for that one launch in San Francisco. It was at the Natural History Museum.
I was there. The Honor 8.
Yes, that was the one. And it was all, like, the word millennial was all over it. I remember we all scoffed at that, but now they're using the term global youths, which I actually kind of like.
Global youth. Oh, that's awesome. Funny.
Yeah. But yeah, the whole push towards like the younger crowd, I think it's always been a good idea, and maybe the marketing strategy is still a little bit rough around the edges. It's definitely better than millennial. Global youth sounds a little bit catchier. Also, it encompasses a lot more people, so I'm down for it.
Yeah, look, I'm going to go with the marketing's going to be wonky with Honor anyway. Like, I'm just accepted it. It's, a bit of that China stuff mixed with a bit of that, young company stuff. It's just fun,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely fun. I will give you that. It was very trendy.
Yeah, totally. So, you've played with the phone. What do you think?
I like it a lot. And, this is something that I have to stem from my experiences so far with the OnePlus 7 Pro and the Pixel 3a. Obviously, two very different devices, but I keep coming back.
That I also have, so we can definitely talk and compare. Yeah, totally.
Well, really, the only thing I wanted to point out about it was that I keep coming back to the Pixel 3a because it's just an easier to handle device. I actually think the OnePlus 7 Pro is a little bit too big. And what I commend, what I commend about the Honor 20 Pro is that it's not too big. It manages to have a decent footprint, despite having an over 6-inch display. And I'm always going to appreciate that. And that's something that I really appreciated with this phone for sure. As far as the camera experience goes, 4 lenses. Honor heard you liked cameras, so they put cameras on cameras on cameras.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, which is fine by me, but really the main story, just like it was on the OnePlus 7 Pro, is that, regardless of what the other lenses might be, it's all about that Sony sensor. Like, it's just such a good sensor, and no matter what phone it's
excellent.
In, it's excellent indeed. Yeah. So I think you actually have your unit. I haven't been able to actually use one since the original briefing until today, obviously, but that was at the experience zone. So you've had it for longer. I'm not sure what your experience might have been.
I've had it since Friday, so It's
Friday.
been
Okay.
4 days, I guess. And I've had it in my pocket. I didn't put my main SIM in it, but I've been using it pretty extensively. In fact, it's recording backup audio right now for this podcast, which is
Nice.
I like Honor and Huawei phones. They have a really nice sound recorder built in. Like it's high quality, uses multiple mics, so it does pretty good job at like stereo recording with noise cancellation. In fact, my backup recording for the listeners, it saved me on the second show we did at Google I/O. I recorded a show there, and it was very, very loud. And my main recording setup, which is a condenser mic on my MacBook, just couldn't handle the all of the background, and especially the bass that was being generated by the rehearsal happening on stage behind us. But I was using the P30 Pro to record as a backup, and man, it handled it like a champ. And I was able to get a pretty decent recording out of it. So, keep that in mind if you're a podcaster, that having a backup recorder, especially one that can handle high sound pressures in case you're in a loud environment, can make or break your recording, basically. So, yeah.
Yeah, you were mentioning that the Honor and the Huawei phones are quite decent at that very task, and I never really thought about that. Like I think about it for like vlogging purposes, which is the reason why I tend to not use those phones, because like just for front-facing camera video, I'm not usually very impressed by them. I'm not impressed by many of them. The only one that I really was impressed by recently was honestly the Black Shark 2, because it has so many microphones on it. So I would probably gravitate to that or the Galaxy S10 for that kind of recording. But in any case, too many devices already in our heads, but we're talking about the Honor 20 Pro.
Yeah, let's go back to that. So you said something that struck a chord with me is, how it feels in hands. It's kind of the perfect size. I actually, since we're talking about phones that we all have, that we both have, that we've recently been reviewing and using, the OnePlus 7 Pro and the Pixel 3a. I have the small Pixel 3a, and I have obviously the OnePlus 7 Pro. Reviewed both of them. The Honor 20 Pro is about the same physical size as the Pixel 3a, a little wider though, but not much. And here's the kicker: 6.26-inch display in that form factor instead of, what is it, 5.6 or 5.7 or something on the Pixel 3a.
Yeah, something like that, with plenty of bezel.
So basically, yeah, you get basically almost a bezel-less display in the same form factor, which means the phone is super easy to hold, feels great in hand, and then is on top of that, giving you this massive screen real estate that's just shy of what you'd get from a really large phone like a Galaxy S10 Plus or that OnePlus 7 Pro, right?
Yeah. What color are you rocking on yours?
I have that bluish green color.
Okay.
I guess what's it called? Oh, I forgot the names of the colors.
Well, they had the so I posted this on my Twitter as I was kind of live tweeting the event. What I found so funny was that when Phantom Black came up, and it was clearly purple.
So Phantom Blue is what I have then.
Okay, Phantom Blue is that is the one. So
That's
Phantom Black comes up, and even the presenter, I keep forgetting his name, but even he chuckled when he got to that slide, and he was like, "Phantom Black, well, It got close to purple." I'm like, what?
Yeah, they both look stunning. I have to say though that I still think the Honor View 20, I know this is complicated, this naming convention they have, because they have the View series and then the regular Honor series. So last year they had the View 10 and the Honor 10, and now they have the View 20 and the Honor the Honor 20.
Honor 20.
And the Honor 20 Pro and the Honor 20 Lite. So we're talking about the 20 Pro, and I like the back on the View 20, that chevron pattern, much more.
Yes,
because
I did love that too.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, the Honor 20 is super shiny, super fingerprint magnet. Like, this thing will not last for 1 second in your hands without a fingerprint. Like, you can look at it the wrong way and you'll see a fingerprint. It's so intense. But in that sense, I feel like if you're going to go that way, it's, instead of just a mirror, which is what this looks like, a very deep mirror, like very, very lustrous mirror, why not give some pattern or something, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what I liked about the View 20, because it had that chevron finish.
Yeah, did you get a look at any of the special, not really special edition, but like obviously the main one would be that Moschino, is that the way? Moschino?
Yeah, so mine was a Moschino edition, but in blue. I didn't have the red one. The red one is really striking though.
Well, for the Honor 20 and the Honor 20 Pro right now, it's a little bit too on the nose. Like, the branding is fine and all that, but I don't know if you got a glimpse at the actual back of that phone for the Moschino version of this one. It's literally a black backing with lettering on it that says, "This is not a Moschino phone." I was like, what do they think of the global youth?
I didn't see that one. I was talking about the Moschino for the View 20 because that's the edition that I got. It doesn't say any Moschino anywhere. It just, apparently is the Moschino version that we got to review. I did not know that. Yeah, I don't know. This is again, I want to say, and I say that very respectfully, China and young company doing weird marketing.
Yeah, indeed.
It's all good. Let's roll with it, right?
Yeah.
I just think the phone looks good and a little too shiny for me, but good. Mostly because of fingerprints, but it feels amazing in hand. It's dense too. It feels hefty. I don't know how heavy is it. Are the specs out for the weights? I don't think they gave us the weights, so I couldn't put them in my hands on.
I don't have that written down anywhere, and I'm looking at my notebook now.
Not OnePlus 7 Pro heavy, but it's definitely heavier than a Pixel 3a. I can tell you that.
Oh yeah, indeed.
It's probably like 180 grams is what I'm guessing. It's definitely more than 160, 150, which is what you'd expect that size phone to be. And it's a glass sandwich. It really feels dense and well made, right?
Oh yeah, indeed. It absolutely does, and it shines real well. You were talking about the look. It has that triple layer on the back. As far as the look is concerned, where do you? So are you into the hole punch design that Honor has? I think this is the only phone that is doing it the way that it is. So small, up on the top left.
I mean, it's basically the same display and punch hole that we saw in the View 20, just scaled down in size because View 20 has a bigger 6.4-inch display, I think. So think of it from the front. Actually, you have a hard time telling them apart, the View 20 and the Honor 20 Pro. They're basically like just one is smaller than the other version of each other. Yeah. I don't mind the hole punch. I think it's an okay compromise, especially what they've done here, which is one. It's not like an oval one like on the Galaxy S10 and S10 Plus. It's more like the Galaxy S10e. It's just a small one. Actually, the S10 regular has a small one as well. So it's more like the smaller Galaxies. But it's exactly like the View 20. It's a 4.5 millimeter, and it's on the left. I think the left side makes more sense than the right side to me, but I don't know, maybe. The thing that bugs me the most about both the View 20 and the Honor 20 Pro in terms of displays, it's IPS. I've been using so many OLED phones in the last few years that IPS can look really good. I mean, these are good displays. They're really strong. They're really nice IPS panels. But, once you go OLED, you can't go back. Like, you put it side by side even with a P30, right, non-Pro. And it's just like, the P30 display just looks better,
And I find it funny because a lot of, not a lot, but some AMOLED or OLED displays have been managing to match or even surpass the brightness of some IPS displays. Because that was usually the core difference between the two, is that IPS can be brighter since it's like heavily backlit. But yeah, the lines are getting much more blurred nowadays. But I think the main difference these days is that if you have an OLED or an AMOLED, you can get a nice looking always on display, or even just have that feature to begin with.
And you can also save a bit of battery by having a dark theme on. And in fact, the P30 and P30 Pro have a dark theme you can enable on the battery. I think it's called a battery saving display mode or something. It turns the whole thing dark, and I love it. You just leave that on. But on the Honor 20 Pro, and I had to go back to my Honor View 20 to look. There's none of these two modes don't exist, despite them pretty much running similar software. And so even if you want to turn on like a dark mode, you can't do that on the Honor 20 Pro. And that's one of the things, in the always on display. And then it makes the phone a little thicker, and because you have to have that backlight. And so it's a bit of a compromise. And I'm bringing the P30 up because honestly, if you're going to compare them in terms of pricing, £599 is the retail pricing for the Honor 20 Pro. And it is that would be if it were sold in the US, and we'll talk about the whole can of worms that this brings up. But if it were sold in the US, it'd be pretty much $599 US. It pretty much translates these days. When you see a phone, most sellers, most companies sell them for the same price in euros, British pounds, and US dollars. So think in your head, $599 US, not conversion rate. And so at that price, you can buy a P30 for that price all day long right now. A gray market in the US. So, and if you look at them on paper, they are so close. Have you checked that out?
No, not the P30. I still have a P30 Pro that I have to like actually use.
So think about this for a second. This both have an 8 megapixel 3 times telephoto OIS lens, probably the same one, f over 2.4, exactly the same specs. Both have a telephoto that's 16 megapixel with a pretty wide field of view, and have well, there's a difference. The P30 has autofocus on its ultra wide, which lets it do macro photography, right?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Whereas this is the one thing that's interesting about the Mate. Not the Mate. The Honor 20 Pro is that it does have a fourth lens, which is a macro lens that's a dedicated 2 megapixel f over 2.4 fixed focus lens. It's fixed to 4 centimeters. That's where the sweet spot is. So It's designed to be a macro, but it's hard for you to tell if you focus perfectly, because there's a bit of, with that f over 2.4, you got a little, the depth of field is wide enough that you have a bit of play there. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things about the macro, is that the level of detail is very low because 2 megapixels. And it's hard to really tell if you're focused right, because you don't really know exactly where you're at on that 4 centimeters, which is 5 something inches, 5.7. And then you have also the problem that it's got large pixels, 1.75 micron, but with f1 2.4, it's not going to be very good in low light, right? Mm. So in a way, the P30 has that ultra wide angle with autofocus, which lets it do macros and might perform better, at least give you more detail doing that.
Can I ask you though, how often do you do macro to begin with?
Not really. And generally, honestly, if you use the aperture mode on any Huawei or Honor phone, like if the ones that have an aperture mode, you can replicate a macro pretty easily by basically pulling back a little bit, putting in aperture mode and focusing on something close up, and it'll do a pretty good job and gives you that fake bokeh in the background. So that's the other thing I wrote in my hands-on Geekspin. I was like, well, do we really? I mean, they were very upfront with us when they presented this phone to us at a briefing in San Francisco just before I.O.
I loved the language around it. It was so funny.
Right? That they didn't know quite what they were doing with that macro. They kind of threw it in there to see what, like, they literally said to us, yeah, we put it in there just to see if it'll stick. We don't know if we're going to do that again. And
we want to know what the response is going to be to this thing we're adding in.
I honestly don't know. I still have mixed feelings. But let's finish the cameras a bit, because I'm just pointing out the similarity of the P30 and the and the Honor 20 Pro. And I think the reason I'm bringing it up is because they're so close. So, it doesn't have a macro, the P30, but it has a macro through autofocus on the ultra wide. Mm-hmm. And then you look at the main sensors, and this is where it's really interesting. The P30 has that crazy RYYB, the yellow sensor, right? That is in the P30 Pro. Yeah. It's 40 megapixels. It's pixel binning, quad Bayer, and it doesn't have OIS on the P30. It has OIS on the P30 Pro. And the f-stop is not as good as on the P30 Pro. So it's not 1.6, it's f/1.8. But if you look at it, that sensor is so good at f/1.8, even without OIS, that it's very similar to what you're going to get on the Honor 20 Pro, which is a 48 megapixel, that's Sony IMX586, with, this is the part that I'm really excited about, f/1.4.
Yeah.
That has got to let in a lot of light.
Yeah, indeed. And I'm so have you seen that sort of depth of field as well using it?
Yes, and that's my point. It's like, if you want to do macro photography, if you have, you can zoom in on that 12 you can use the digital zoom on that 12 megapixel to get below 2 times, right? Before the telephoto kicks in, and you can naturally get the same experience as a macro lens. You have to pull back and zoom in digitally a bit, but you have 12 megapixels to play with. So that 2 megapixel macro, you're still getting more detail, even if you pull back and digitally zoom, right? And because the 1.4 gives you such a shallow depth of field, you get this really nice bokeh that's natural. And then if you want, you can crank it up with the aperture mode. I also found that I did some experimenting using the telephoto as a macro, right? Because on my Sony NEX camera, I have the stock lens, and I basically zoom in and pull out when I want to do shallow depth of field macro photography, as it were. I need a lot of light because the f-stop is f over 5.6 at that point or something.
Oh, yeah.
Right? But my point is, the telephoto here is 3 times optical zoom at f over 2.4 with an 8 megapixel sensor. So again, you pull back, you set it to 3 times zoom, and you can get a macro shot that's still 8 megapixel, way better than the 2 megapixel from the macro. And yes, you need a lot of light, f/2.4, but again, the macro is also f/2.4. So I don't know if that macro lens is really necessary.
Yeah. And
that's
I think
my takeaway.
And I think even without the comparison to the P30, a lot of people might be looking at that lens like, what am I going to do with that? Like, what what exactly am I going to like get 4 centimeters away from?
Cameras, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And unlike the other quad cameras on the market, because there are several, the Galaxy A9, the Galaxy S10 5G, the Honor P30 Pro, Huawei P30 Pro, all have quad cameras in the back, but the fourth camera on all of these is a depth sensor or a time of flight sensor.
Yeah, it's more of a utility thing. It's not really
a camera. You can't actually open that camera up. Whereas with the Honor 20 Pro, you literally have in the more settings, like a dedicated, super macro, whatever they call it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So I'm not sold on the macro, but I don't want to knock them on it because it's creative and cool and different. But I'm not, again, in terms of imaging performance, I think you're better off using either the telephoto or the main lens at f/1.4 or the aperture mode that uses the main lens at f/1.4 with fake bokeh. That's my takeaway.
And I found it kind of interesting that whenever the Sony IMX sensor starts to appear on phones, it almost makes the other lenses on the phone a bit moot. And not to say that they're useless, it's just like those are things that are there in case you kind of need that. If you need a wide angle shot, it's there. If you need a telephoto or a portrait, it's there. But for the most part, man, I just keep it on the main lens. Like when it comes to the OnePlus 7 Pro, I'm just like, as long as you keep it on 1X, you can have a great time. It's when you press that button and try to move other places.
Yeah, even zooming at 2x with that, digitally zooming at 2x with the 48 megapixel sensor on all these phones that have it, gives you pretty great results because it does the smart pixel binning and stuff, does a bit of interpolating until it hits about 2 times and then it kind of starts losing data, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because it has 48 megapixels to start with. And so it's kind of like what Nokia did with PureView on those 41 megapixel, the PureView 808 and the 1080, the Lumia 1080 1020 back in those days. It's the same kind of technology. So you can zoom digitally with lossless to about 2 times. So it's very interesting. You're right, because it's like, and that sensor is just so versatile. And again, I'm comparing the P30, which is really the decision you have to make now. Is do you want a P30 with OLED? Or do I want a a teardrop notch, or do I want a Honor 20 Pro with an IPS and a punch hole? Because in terms of the imaging performance, they're very close. I think that the P30 Pro is still better because it's OIS and a faster lens on the main camera, and of course that crazy telescopic, whatever it's called, periscopic,
the far zoom,
right?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the low light on the 48 megapixel IMX 586 with f/1.4, I've taken some low light shots now, and like, wow, like we're talking very close to what that RYYB sensor can do.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
On the P30 with f/1.8 and no IS, so not compared to the P30 Pro. Like you take a bit of a ding on the P30 for not having OIS and having a slower lens, but I don't think that it can do the super dark stuff that the P30 and P30 Pro can do, where you're like in a completely unlit room and it still gets you something.
Yeah, and then suddenly there's something there. Yeah.
Yeah, the Honor 20 Pro, the IMX 586 doesn't quite match that. But in most low light situations that are normal low light situation, like you're walking down the street in the dark, you want to take a photo of like some cool piece of art late at night and you really only have the lights of the street lights and maybe the moon, you can get some really nice photos in my experience. Have you used the camera much at all?
No, it's one of those. So I'm actually going to be traveling in about 2 weeks, and I want to use the P30 Pro that I have for that entire trip. So I'm just gonna go nuts with that thing. Really crash course myself with it. So I'm really looking forward
strong,
to it.
Man.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Quick question. In the comparison between P30 and Honor 20 Pro, they have the same internal specs, right? They have the same processor.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay,
Kirin 980. I think the Honor 20 Pro wins a little bit because it comes with 8 gigs of RAM and 256 gigs of storage, where I think the base P30 is 6 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage.
And of course, they're under the same umbrella, so they have that GPU turbo as well. Like
correct. They have all of that the same, basically. Everything else is the same. You do get a headphone jack with the P30, which you don't have on the P30 Pro and on the Honor 20 Pro. So remember that if you're looking at Honor 20 Pro and you want headphones, it's not going to happen. I mean, there's an adapter in the box, so that's not bad. But, keep that in mind.
Yeah.
I think, trying to think of other differences. Battery, the Honor 20 Pro wins on battery a little bit because it's 4,000 milliamp hour. I think the P30 is like 38 or something. I need to look it up. I mean, look, the reality is this, is we know the Kirin 980 with something around 4,000 milliamp hour and a 1080p display is a killer battery life. Like we're talking 2 days easily.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
So let me see. P30 specs. I'm going to our good friends at GSM Arena who provide us a public service of all the awesomeness. So that phone has a 3650 milliamp hour battery. So a little smaller. It is also a smaller phone because the display is 6.1 inches. So it's a little more compact even. But they're very toe-to-toe, especially with the current pricing, right?
Yeah.
And there is an 8 gigs of RAM, 256 gig option available, but you'll have to pay a little more for it.
So if I can bring up a sort of a side comparison here, like with the P30 against a phone that's kind of under the same umbrella, it makes sense that they would be pretty neck and neck. I heard conversations during the launch today comparing the Honor 20 Pro to the OnePlus 7 Pro. We don't have to go too long on this if you don't want to, but I'm just curious.
No, but I think it's an interesting comparison, and I think we should make it, especially
because this Honor 20 Pro actually undercuts the price of the OnePlus 7 Pro.
Absolutely. And I think that, the other discussion to have here that we should, I think it's a good discussion, first of all, especially for markets where those two phones are available. In the US here, it doesn't really matter too much. But I think the big difference to me there is, the first thing is size. If you can't deal with a big phone, and regardless, even if you're not cross-shopping with the Honor 20 Pro, if you can't deal with a big phone, the OnePlus 7 Pro is a beast. And it's the size of a Note 9, okay? Like, I don't mind because I love what I'm getting out of the OnePlus 7 Pro. I'm willing to compromise on having a brick in my pocket. But I have to say, this is becoming the biggest drawback of that phone now that I've had it for, almost 3 weeks. Yeah. And I still have it in my pocket, and I love it. But man, it's a monster. It's so big and heavy. And
I've never put a pop socket on a phone faster than this one.
Yeah, it's also slippery as F. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly.
But look, I mean, the reality is, you're right. The pricing is so close. So $599 US would be roughly what the Honor 20 Pro would be worth in the US if it was sold here, and $670. So $70 more buys you a Quad HD 90 hertz insane OLED display.
Yep, indeed.
And basically, the cameras are very similar. You get a pop-up camera, which is cool. You get the same battery size. You get equivalent kind of processor in terms of performance. The Kirin 980 might be a little faster day to day in terms of like normal app starting and stuff like that. But I think a lot of that comes to Honor and Huawei's optimizations on their Magic OS / EMUI OS, which is, they can do like Apple. They can tightly integrate hardware and software since they make their own chips, right?
Yes.
But I always feel like this Honor feels so fast to me. Like every Kirin 980 phone that I have, View 20, Honor 20 Pro, P30, P30 Pro, Mate 20 Pro, Mate 20, they all feel so fast to me. But I have to say, so does the OnePlus 7. The OnePlus 7 Pro, I mean, it has, but, of course it has to drive a Quad HD display at 90 hertz, right? So that's...
The thing, I don't know how many battles EMUI would actually win over Oxygen OS for most users that might be listening right now, because Oxygen OS is just, it's in and of itself such a revelation of an operating system.
It's amazing. Yeah, that's the other. So the other question, and you're thanks for bringing it up, I think, is size and then OS. Like, honestly, you're going to get more updates, especially now with the next thing we're going to talk about. You're going to get more updates faster on the OnePlus, and you're going to get a much more stock and much more polished, I think, user experience. I just don't like what Honor and Huawei are doing with their OS. I think that, they need to give us some stock Android, especially Honor is in a great place to do that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Even though Magic OS looks a little too familiar, if we're completely honest.
I don't know. It's funny because Magic OS to me, like, I don't feel it's so different from EMUI. I don't even know why they're branding it differently at this point,
Yeah, it's probably just differentiating between the brands at the very least. But yeah, the last question I wanted to ask in this particular comparison of you, because since you have both of them, did you find any of the photos from the other lenses actually either going neck and neck, or did you find a disparity between the two? Because to be honest, I am not a fan of the other lenses of the OnePlus 7 Pro, and I feel like I would be a fan of the Honor 20 Pro.
Honestly,
lenses.
I think it's better. I think if you are an imaging freak, like somebody who really cares about photography, the main cameras are definitely similar because same sensor, right? The f-stop is an advantage on the Honor 20 Pro because f1.4 versus 1.6, I think, or 1.5. I don't know what the OnePlus is now anymore. I just reviewed that phone. How can I forget, Joshua?
It might be 1.5. I think you're right at 1.5.
It's close. It's very close. But the tele, I think that you can tell that the tele is so much sharper and more detailed.
I figured, yeah.
And I mean, don't get me wrong. The OnePlus tele is good, but this is a great tele. And here's where the Honor 20 Pro wins completely, hands down. It's the ultra wide angle. It is so much sharper.
Yep.
Like the OnePlus 7 Pro needs a software update to fix there's something wrong with the software calibration.
I'm so disappointed by that. I couldn't believe it when I used it.
It's so soft.
Yeah. It's super soft, and you can't even use it in the video mode, which is like my first go-to thing.
Yeah,
so
and you can with the Honor 20 Pro. You can select which camera you want for video.
Yeah.
I figured
this would be the answer.
You can't do video with a macro, though, Josh.
I'm sorry?
You can't do video with a macro.
Oh, man. So
Damn it!
Yeah, I can't get all close to my
kidding.
details. Yeah. Also, a 2 megapixel? That's isn't that like a 720? It's not going to go anywhere.
You'd get like 480p SD out of that if you stabilize it. You know?
Exactly. Oh, man. Can you imagine, though, using just a macro lens for like so much content in a video? Oh, my goodness. That's a very specific kind of video.
Yeah, but you look, if they put manual controls on video like they have on the LG phones, you could achieve that with that iPhone 1.4 IMX 586, you know? That
is fair. All right, so obviously we have the big elephant in the room, like the looming thing. Can I tell you, though, at the launch, there were a lot
Did they mention anything?
No, not on stage. As a matter of fact, I feel like they glossed or maybe rushed through the OS portion of the presentation. Maybe it was by design, and maybe they had it planned that way the entire time, but I felt like they didn't spend much time. Exactly. But also, while we were on the floor, after the presentation was done, there were a lot of news reporters running around from various different outlets, and I was interviewed by a couple of them, so was TK, and we both like convened afterwards, and we were like, they told us they would only ask us about the device. What a swerve that like immediately they were like, so how do you feel about all the news that was coming out? And we were like, oh crap, like,
oh boy,
what do you expect us to say? Like, we know as much as you do right now. You know?
Yeah,
we can speculate until the cows come home, but honestly,
do you
want to
recap for the audience what's going on here, at least your quick take on it?
Well, okay, so my main take, at least for the moment, like, I mean, without getting too political with all of this stuff, like, I just find it I find it a little bit unfair that Huawei is so easy to vilify and to use as a scapegoat for whatever political gains there might be. I think it was Roland who tweeted this, and I could not agree more. It sucks that it's between two countries whose whims are going to affect millions of people who don't even live in those two countries.
Exactly.
And it's just a terrible thing. And I don't really have any hot takes as to like quote unquote who's going to win or anything like that. What I want to see though is whenever Google and Huawei, I'm not even saying US China. I know that that's a big topic, but I don't really want to care about that at the moment. Google and Huawei, looking specifically at them, whatever the concession is, whatever the decision is as to how to move forward with their software licenses and whatnot, I think it should be contracted. I think that the consumers need to know that, let's say, for the next 5, 7, 10 years, in writing, they know they're going to have Android and be able to use their phones on the daily. I think that should be what comes next.
100%. Mm-hmm. Yeah. My biggest thing, so just to recap quickly what happened is last week, our stupid president, because, you know, we make fun of him on this show all the time.
Oh, you do?
Did a stupid thing, surprise, and he signed an executive order that basically put Huawei on the hot list with the Department of Commerce, which means that there's the kind of list of companies that American companies are not allowed to do business with. And until then, Huawei wasn't on that list. ZTE has been on that list in the past, and that's a story we kind of covered in the past on the podcast a little bit. They were able to work out a deal and and get back off that list. So Huawei is now on that list, which means Huawei and like many of its subsidiaries, including like obviously HiSilicon, which makes the Kirin chips, including Honor, a laptop division from Huawei. I mean, everyone. And so this company is now on this list that American companies can do business with. And at first you're like, yeah, who cares, whatever, right? Then you think about it for a second. You're like, wait a minute. That means Google cannot sell its software to Huawei, and you're going to say, well, doesn't matter, Android is open source. Yeah, so AOSP is safe, but that means Play services, security updates, all the Google apps that you love and use every day, Google Photos, Google Maps, Gmail, all of that is not open source. It has some open source parts to it, but it's owned by Google and sold by Google as, free, basically a free package. But they there's an approval process, and now they can't even consider Huawei as a company that they can give that to. And then, and we'll talk about the ramifications of that in a second. And then it means that Intel can no longer sell chips to Huawei for their awesome laptops, or AMD, or NVIDIA. I think actually AMD is Canadian, so maybe not. But NVIDIA, definitely companies like Qualcomm, although Huawei and Honor make very few phones with Qualcomm chips, they do have some phones with Qualcomm chips. So Qualcomm can no longer supply chips to Huawei. So now you can start seeing how big of a problem this is going to be. It's not a huge deal for the chips because apparently Huawei's been stockpiling Intel chips, but it also means Microsoft Windows won't be able to be on their laptops anymore, right? So like think about that's killing it. So you're going to say, well, that's bad for Huawei and bad for Americans. But wait a minute, no, it's bad for the rest of the world because now Europe, Southeast Asia, the Philippines, Hong Kong, all these countries where people use Google Play services and Google Apps or use Windows laptops with Intel chips made by Huawei, they're not going to be able to buy these products. And more importantly, on the existing products, get updates to their software and support for that software. In fact, it means that whatever next Mate phone that Huawei releases, or whatever next Honor View phone that Honor releases, will just not even be able to have Google Play services on it, even when it's sold in Europe.
Yeah,
and that's the problem.
This is the part that's really unfair, is that the perception of Huawei, especially in the States, is that, Chinese, right? But the thing is, I'm sitting here in London. They just had a launch. Well, Honor did, but there have been Huawei launches here, and there are a lot of people running around London as I speak with Huawei phones, gleefully using them. They're happy with those phones, and in the U.S., it's like, stick it to the Chinese company. No, like you're saying just now, it affects way more people than that, and it's on a scale that I think most people in the U.S. don't even understand. So yeah, huge implications. I'm glad you brought up Microsoft too, because I'm using the laptop right now, to record this. Yeah, me
too. Exactly. And so if you think for a second, who cares? I'm an iPhone user, whatever, right? Okay, fine, fair enough. And my family in the UK is an iPhone user as well. We don't care, or we use Google phones. We don't care. Think about this for a second. This is essentially about a trade war that Trump started with China because he's got an ego issue or something, And China's just so far been playing pretty nicely, honestly. They could have done some really terrible things to the U.S. in terms of tariffs on some stuff, but they haven't. But if China wants to get mad right now about this, because, for better or for worse, Huawei is closely connected to the Chinese government, they could force Apple to stop manufacturing in China. Do you think that's not going to affect you and the price of your next iPhone? Right? So this impacts way more. There are so many repercussions and cause and effects that could take place from this, seemingly innocuous executive order. It's insane. And the whole tech industry right now is freaking the F out. If you don't think this is a big deal, you are so sadly mistaken. This is going to affect so many things. And so I think they're going to have to come to some kind of agreement. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe this ego-tripping thing that Trump's doing is basically to kind of force the Chinese to the negotiating table and to get his way for whatever reason. And some compromise reached. There's already been a 90-day compromise reached somewhat, that this list that Huawei Honor are on is basically that they're guaranteeing, the Department of Commerce is allowing Honor and Huawei to continue to support product for 90 days. So updates and anything else basically you have 90 days to clean house and wrap things up is basically what the relaxation of that thing that happened this weekend. But that's small consolation. That still means the next May 20 is going to be in trouble. That still means China could retaliate, forcing Apple out of China. And I don't mean out of China for sales. I mean out of China for manufacturing, which is insane. Although they might not do that simply because Foxconn is the manufacturer and they stand to lose a lot of money if they don't have Apple as a,
which is kind of a point I wanted to bring up. Like that is 100% what they could do, is like actually raise tensions with Foxconn and then actually affect Apple products around the world. I mean, that is one retaliation thing, but like, do you actually think that China won't, I'll use the word cave. Like, I'm not going to say they're going to give up or cave or anything like that, but this is like, Huawei is China's biggest company. They are number 2 in the world. There's a lot of money on the line. Do you think that China's really going to try to fight back on it if they just want to have Huawei still in the consciousness?
The reality is that Huawei makes most of its money in China, right? So, yes, they do. It doesn't look good for them internationally, but maybe they retreat for a few years to, China and continue making tons of money selling their AOS-based OS on their phones and, their some kind of Windows clone that they come up with. I mean, like, software is pretty easy to replicate, and the Chinese is very lax in terms of IP or respecting IP, right? Even if you know how many bootleg versions of Windows are available out there.
Yeah,
I mean,
that is true.
My point is, like, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but I don't know. I think everybody stands to lose, and this is the problem. Trump is being a dick and forcing everyone down a rabbit hole of doom here. Like, literally, like, Tim Cook must have called him after this and said, "What the F are you doing, dude?" Like, there are so many things at stake. This is insane stuff.
Yeah.
And if you don't think it's going to affect you, it's going to affect you. It's already affecting the U.S. economy, this China trade war that he started in. That's not even touching on this whole Huawei being banned thing. So the other thing that bugs me about the whole thing, and we haven't brought up yet, is there's no evidence. No evidence has ever been produced.
And you know what? A lot of people here in London have been saying that as well. There's no evidence in Europe that they did that.
Done anything nefarious.
Exactly.
I am willing to believe that at some point they might have had some backdoors in their network equipment, but I don't think they ever had anything in their phones. Frankly, security researchers would have been all over this years ago, okay?
Yeah.
Like, I think that it's possible that there's been some stuff going on with some networking equipment and or even if there wasn't anything going on, I can understand how some countries would choose to not want Huawei networking equipment because they're so closely tied to the Chinese government. And, this is infrastructure equipment. This is equipment that's mission critical for communication. And yes, if you do have a backdoor in there, perhaps you can intercept some communication that you shouldn't be intercepting. I can see them by caution choosing not to use Huawei's 5G and 4G network equipment at the cell tower level. But from there to completely ban the company and make all this pompous charade of a dog and pony show around it, like, seriously, I'd just produce some evidence, because I don't see this being real. I think this is completely made up and used as an instrument of politics to stroke somebody's ego at this
Exactly, which is the reason why I say it is unfair that Huawei can be vilified so easily. Whether or not it's actually founded, and like we said, there's no evidence for it. It's just a way for, you're absolutely right. It's just this is just a pawn in a much greater problem that we have politically and in the world. And at the end of the day, that's the consumers that are going to get hurt, which is the reason why, whatever the agreement is, we have to rekindle the trust of the consumer. And if an agreement can be made that licensing can continue, they have to know for how long. The consumer needs every bit of information, all the transparency.
I just bought an Honor phone for my mom a year ago in France because she needed a new phone. I was like, this is a great phone for the money. Let's get it. Let's get it for you. Carrier sells it subsidized. You want a subsidized phone? Done. It was like a Honor 9 Lite, I think, I want to say. Anyway, so I'm like, okay, she knows nothing about this stuff. Our phone is almost exclusively using Google apps. What's going to happen?
Yeah.
Is she going to have to go buy a new phone? She's 75. I need to help her out with this. This is like, And there's got to be a whole bunch of people in this boat right now.
So did you see about the 90 days until I think it's August 19 is when the cutoff
Correct.
is. But as far as we know that it's pretty clear that future devices are going to have trouble licensing and getting certification, having Google Play services installed on those phones because of those licensing issues, like I said. But current devices, there's still no full no one has a true answer yet as to what will happen to
and that's the
current
other
phones.
problem.
Yeah.
Look, I think I'm going to play the optimist here because I am an optimist, but I think that there's too much at stake and this is too big. And despite this being essentially just, a tantrum by our president, I think that they're going to work it out. They have to. I think there are too many companies in the US depending, Huawei is one of the biggest chip buyers for Intel, okay? Mm-hmm. What do you think Intel's doing right now? If they're not talking to the Department of Commerce and or Trump in person right now, screaming at him on the phone, I don't know what's going on. Because they've got to be freaking out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Qualcomm is safe, but Windows, Microsoft, and Intel and Google have got to be pissed right now.
Yeah.
Because Google, they were, the big news is Google cut them off. No. Google probably was like, we need to do this. Crap. Because how many times have Google been on stage at Huawei and Honor events? They've been very close partners.
Yeah.
They like each other a lot. They work well together. Remember, the Nexus 6P was a Huawei phone.
Yeah.
They have a long time relationship, these two companies. Don't think for a second that Google is being like, oh, America, yeah. No, it's not like that at all. They're just doing what they have to do legally to stay.
And even then, all of the
business.
language on all of these articles was one of compliance. It's not that Google was so gung-ho about revoking licenses. It was that, we have to follow the law. We have to follow the letter of the law. So This is just what happens.
The whole thing sucks. I think we should move on to some other news because I'm just
let's lighten it up. Yeah, exactly.
But look, I want to wrap up with one more thing about the Honor 20 Pro, and I want to say that like the OnePlus 7 Pro and like the P30 non-Pro, these phones, all three of these phones have no IP rating, no wireless charging. And I was going to say no headphone jack, but the P30 has a headphone jack. But basically, that's another thing that they have in common. And then notification lights. Interestingly, the Honor has a notification light. So the Honor 20 Pro has a tiny little notification light in the tiny little slit of an earpiece that it has up there, which made me very, very happy because the OnePlus 7 Pro does not. And I think the P30 has a notification light as well, but I could be wrong about that. Maybe it doesn't.
It's funny. I haven't really used a notification light in that way in such a long time. I know some people are totally into it, but I've never.
I like it.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think for me, and this matters more for the Honor 20 Pro because it doesn't have an always-on display. So it's nice to have the phone sitting there on your desk. You walk away, you go to the bathroom, you come back, and now it's flashing red. So I've got some Gmail. Or it's flashing blue. I got some Facebook. Or it's flashing light blue. I got some Twitter. Or it's alternating between these colors, so you get multiple notifications. It just helps,
Okay.
That's just me. I'm old school. I love the Blackberries because they had that.
Yes,
they still do. I think
that's the last time I actually fully remember using it to.
But a lot of phones have it. You'd be surprised. It's something I always pay attention to on every phone I review. And the Galaxy S10 Plus or the whole S10 line were the first Galaxies in a long time not to have a notification light. So
okay, fair.
You probably don't notice one of those ambient things you don't even think about, and then you don't have it, and you go like, duh! At least for me. So there's a bunch of new phones that were announced, in addition to all this stuff we just talked about.
Yeah.
Did you have? I have had no hands-on with any of these phones. Did you get a chance to play with the Asus ZenFone 6 by any chance?
No, but I have definitely sent out my messages to people that I want.
Yeah, I reached out to Asus going, hello, when is my review unit arriving? Not even can I have a review unit. It's like, when is it coming? Because this is super cool.
Yeah. Okay, so throwback to the Oppo N3, we literally have a rotating rear camera module that comes forward. So
that's right.
And again, a Sony 48 megapixel sensor. So I mean, think about that. Super high quality selfies.
Yeah, and remember, the other phone that does that is the Galaxy A80,
which I still haven't.
It has
have you
weird...
played with that one?
No, I haven't either.
That's the
But
other
it's
one,
also has this rotating weird thing and it's got the same Sony IMX586, I believe.
Oh, that one. Okay. I thought Samsung was
Asus
developing their own.
Yeah, they are, but I think it's using the Sony sensor,
Oh.
ironically. And I do think the Asus uses a Samsung sensor.
Oh, wow.
So I could be wrong. Fact check me, folks. And you can yell at me on Twitter.
Either way, how cool is this thing? Like, okay, so there
It's
was someone
super cool.
here who was using it. So we like, I didn't touch it, but he was using it.
Did you ask for hands-on?
I mean, we were in a black cab, so I don't know how much I would have been able to actually do.
Oh, I see.
But we asked him about it, and he was saying that he's having a good time with it so far, and showed us how you can move the camera to pretty much any point on the axis in order to do photos or even video.
That's got me excited. Yeah.
My only problem with that is when you have it about halfway and you're trying to use it in that forward fashion, kind of like a taser in that way. All the video is going to be vertical. It's not like you can covertly move it in such a way that you have 16:9 or rather 18:9 or 16:9 video. That was the only thing that I kind of got a little bit miffed about. But overall, I'm excited about that kind of thing. I think that this module would break easier, though, than like a pop-up.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems a little more fragile to me as well. But look, I mean, the thing has a headphone jack. It's really affordable, like $500, right?
That's the crazy part. Like, how is that even possible? Like, you have this kind of sensor. You have, isn't it rocking flagship specs right now? Like,
yeah, it's 855. And it has like a pretty big battery too. It's a 5,000
That's
milliamp
the
hour
one.
battery.
Oh my God.
Wow. I mean, this thing is really interesting to me. I don't know.
And you know
want
what's
it.
funny? This phone all of a sudden came out. Like, weren't we all kind of snoozing on the ZenFone 5 because it?
Oh my God, so snooze-tastic.
And now they just come out of the woodwork with this thing. I hope. Like, who does Asus?
It's supposedly coming to the US.
That's what I was about to say. Does
the
Asus
thing. That's why I'm
actually
like,
sell in
give
the
me my
US?
review unit. I want it now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I definitely want to try that thing out. What were the other lenses on it? I know there's two, right? There's only two.
So I've got the specs in front of me.
Okay.
Woohoo, look at me. 40 megapixel. I'm not sure if the Samsung or the Sony one. 13 megapixel f/2.4 ultra wide.
Oh, so it's an ultra wide. Okay.
Yeah, which really, if you're gonna have two lenses, that's what you want, right?
Yeah.
Screw the tele. You want ultra wide and regular. This thing also has stock Android for the first time on a ZenFone.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Complete stock Android. So so we're talking about these phones at like $500-$600 right now, right? And up to $670 for the OnePlus 7 Pro. And there's another phone that I got to play with at MWC that I got another hands-on with more recently in San Francisco, the ZT Axon 10 Pro, which is probably not coming to the US and probably and there's has no certain pricing yet. And there's also a 5G version, which will be more expensive. But the 4G version, from what I gathered, poking around at the various people at ZTE that were in the room, they're targeting the same price point as something between that ZenFone and the Honor 20 Pro. So we're talking $500-$600 for a Snapdragon 855 flagship phone with 3 lenses in the back. That's insane.
Yeah.
I think there's so much going on, and stock Android as well on that one. So, yeah.
So what
Crazy.
happened? Like, we were complaining about $1,000 phones for a while, and now there are so many of them that are coming out at like a good price. Like these are the prices that flagships were 3-4 years ago, $600-$700.
Exactly.
That's crazy to me. And obviously we have even other ones. I know you didn't have this on your list, Miriam, but just a quick shout to the Red Magic 3 that's meant to come out at the end of the month.
All right.
So that's another one, 5,000 milliamp hour battery. Again, the Sony 48 megapixel sensor. And the game space.
It's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. Red Magic 3 from Nubia. I'm looking forward to that. I need to request a review unit. So many phones that I just don't have time. It's too much.
None of us do. Like, there's not to get existential here, but a lot of us, like bloggers/YouTubers, like, I've been hearing the word burnout again, and I'm a little bit worried, for the friends, got to make sure that work-life balance is there. But it's literally you're halfway done with a review and another device gets announced. Like, I'm sitting in London right now, and last week we were in San Francisco. Oh, New York. We were in New York for OnePlus. The week before
that's right.
that
You
was San
forgot
Francisco.
already, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's gnarly. It's so crazy. Yeah, speaking of the Red Magic 3, if it's anything like the Red Magic Mars, which I just kind of pseudo reviewed, it's not on my channel yet, but it's ready to go. But
I pseudo reviewed it as well.
Exactly. It's got the triggers on the sides. I thought that was really cool. It warranted a look. But yeah, man, it just every category is being addressed right now. You have a really good camera, you have gaming phones, you have gaming modes, good daily performance. We're in a really good time. So I don't want anybody out there to feel like we're belly aching about, how good it is right now, because it's pretty damn good.
Yeah, it's a good time. So there's more. Believe it or not, we have more. Wait, there's more. So ZenFone 6, very exciting, especially at that price point. Super stoked. The other one that's got me really excited, we'll never see this in the US, but Realme X or Realme 10.
Mm-hmm.
Realme is Oppo's cheap brand, like Redmi is Xiaomi's cheap brand. And what I mean by cheap is, I shouldn't say cheap, affordable. But my point is that it's like the brand they used to really be the price leader, right?
Yes.
And
this is like an India one, right? This is more India.
Yeah, I think so. But this Realme 10 or X is insane. It costs $215 US, 215 in China. Has a pop-up camera, okay? Has, let's see, a 6.53 inch AMOLED 1080p screen. It supports Oppo 21 VOOC charging, which is like basically like OnePlus's standard warp charging. The selfie camera is the same camera as the OnePlus 7 series, which is at that 16 megapixel IMX471, and it's a pop-up camera, and it has the Sony IMX586 48 megapixel camera as a main sensor.
Good God!
And then a depth camera, that 5 megapixel on top of that. And let's see, what's the chip on that is what I'm trying to figure out, because I think that's the part that blew my mind. Snapdragon 710.
Oh, there you go.
Not bad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's basically a Snapdragon 845 that's been taken through the dryer and is shrunk down a little bit in performance, but not by much.
Yeah.
Wow, right?
There's that, yeah. So $215. I love that they still do the US equivalents, even though it's not going to be in the US. But yeah, $215 for sure. Definitely a great price. 710, that is a previous generation SoC though, right? Because we just got that 730.
So basically it's interesting because the 845 spawned the 710, which is kind of a simplified version that spawned itself the 670.
There you go.
That's used in the Pixel 3a. But their lineage is traceable to 845, and then the 855 now has spawned the 730.
Yeah,
and we haven't seen any phones with that yet, and there's probably going to be a 6 series resulting from that as well. But it's interesting. I mean, look, these chips. I mean, for that money out, like you'll seriously a 710 for $215. Buy now, okay? Like you can't go wrong here. It does come with 4 gigs of RAM at that price for $260. So instead of $220, $215, whatever, you pay $260 US, and you get 8 gigs of RAM. Can you believe that?
Yeah, no, that's a great.
It doesn't have stock Android remotely in any way, shape, or form, but holy crap! And I don't know if it's plastic or glass or what.
I was just about to ask. It didn't say anything there about design.
It probably is plastic. You know, it's like the plastic frame and plastic separate in the back that looks like it's plexiglass. Like it looks like glass, but it's not. But I could be wrong. You know, we've seen phones at that price point that are all metal and glass. So it's China. Anything can happen there.
Yeah, exactly. As we, you know what, that could be the name of this episode.
Anything can happen there. Yeah, totally.
China.
Man. So that's one thing that kind of totally made me raise my eyebrows and go like, what?
Mm-hmm.
The next one on the list, there's more, but wait. The Moto One Vision, which is the next generation of the Moto One, which we got in the US eventually at some point last year, but they never sent us a review in it. I even asked for one after it was a US phone, and they're like, oh, no, we don't have any, sorry. I'm like, how can you make a phone? Like, I review a lot of Moto phones for Geekspin. I'm like, how can you not send me a Moto One to play with? Nope.
It did feel a little bit like an afterthought, like during its release cycle, though, right? Like even Moto, you know.
Yeah. So the thing about the One Vision, which is a new one, is that it has, get this, it has an IMX 586 48 megapixel sensor. Oh, actually, no, it's the Samsung version. Sorry.
Oh.
It's not the Sony. It doesn't have the Sony. It has the Samsung version of that. But here's the best part. The best part is it has an Exynos processor. What? So basically, it's a Samsung phone with Moto branding. Because it's Exynos with a Samsung 48 megapixel sensor. Have you ever heard of an Exynos phone that's not a Samsung phone?
I was just about to say, I thought that, which company did it? I'm trying to remember.
That's happened. I know it's happened.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
It's like we can probably count them on one hand.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely.
So this has, the cool thing about this phone is 6.3 inch the display, but it's 21:9 aspect ratio.
So it assumes that you're going to be watching anamorphic all the time.
It's basically super skinny and super tall. I've been saying for a while, and Sony were the first to do this at MWC with, what was it, the Xperia 1 or whatever. This 21:9 has got to happen, and it's got to happen on every phone. I love the idea of a phone that I can grip in width. And, it's fine if there's some bars when you're watching 18:9, 16:9 content. It's all right. It just, honestly, it doesn't matter to me. I just rather have a long, tall phone that's skinnier or less wide than a thicker, wider phone that's less tall, in my opinion.
Wouldn't it be hard to reach to the top, though?
Well, maybe that's definitely a problem with Android and then the tray, right?
Oh, that's
the
true, yeah.
notification and the settings. But who knows? Maybe this runs like a super crazy Lenovo skin on it with like a tray in the bottom, like the Vivo phones,
or some sort of like shortcut,
or shortcut in the buttons at the bottom.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a huge phone to start with. 6.3 inch with that aspect ratio. It's got to be about the same size as the Honor 20 Pro.
That
honestly,
is true.
In terms of real estate, but narrower. It's probably about the same size as Pixel 3a, honestly.
I mean, there's probably going to be, whatever the foldable Moto finally puts out, it's probably going to have that kind of form factor anyway, and then it just folds down. Ideally. But yeah, not too sure. I
like the idea. This phone stood out for me because of that aspect ratio, the fact that it has that 48 megapixel Samsung sensor, and of course the Exynos on it. I'm like, wow, this is like the people say the phone world is boring, Joshua.
Well, we used to say that, but like I said earlier, it's getting so good. It's getting busy, but it's getting so good right now. And we're not even like talking about just form factors in terms of like pop-up cameras, OnePlus 7 Pro, Oppo Reno, whatever, what might have you, ZenFone 6. There's a lot going on in all aspects, and that includes design. So something like this, 21:9, I don't know how often I would actually be viewing that kind of content to truly take advantage of it, but I guess you're right. Some bars are not that bad.
Nah, and also, I mean, some people really do heavy video consumption on their devices, and I get that.
Oh yeah, I'm on YouTube like all the time.
Like for me, I'd rather be able to scroll through more emails, and that's definitely going to let me do that.
Yeah, that is true. That is true.
I mean, yeah. I think that's it for the new phones of the week. Wow, finally. I mean, after a lot of heavy hitters, it's nice to have some kind of obscure things to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
I like obscure phones. They're great. And then I want to talk quickly about Jessica Dolcourt, our good friend at CNET, went to, and she's not the only one, several tech journalists in the US went to Chicago, invited by Samsung to use the Galaxy S10 5G on Verizon's millimeter wave ultra-wideband network. And 6 weeks ago, Motorola had invited the same media to try out Verizon's network in the same city, Chicago, with that 5G mod that hooked up to the Moto Z3.
Oh, so it finally was the mod.
Yeah, so the mod was shown 6 weeks ago, and the speed tests were pretty abysmal. Like they were, a couple of 100 megabits per second, maybe. It didn't really seem to make 5G worth it. So it's interesting that 6 weeks later, obviously that was 6 weeks ago when they showed it to the media. It was the day after they turned on the network. So I'm willing to give them some slack for not having great performance. But not a very good PR stunt, if you ask me. But 6 weeks later, with the Galaxy S10 5G, Jessica and other tech journalists have reported incredibly good speeds on this early 5G network using millimeter wave. You pretty much have to be line of sight from the tower.
Oh, okay. So that was going to be my question. It's definitely not it's not even a block. But
she got gigabit. She got like 1100 megabits per second or something like that.
Be standing like right under it.
And she was like across the street from it, so still not but still outside. So not bad though. Like, I mean, I can, and our battery life didn't completely tank. I mean, it was definitely taking a bit of a hit, but
yeah.
So, look, I don't, for me, the takeaway, if you ask me, I know a lot of listeners are going to ask me this one on Twitter, but look, should you buy a 5G phone in 2019? No. I say wait to 2020, and only if you really have the money and you feel that, first of all, if you're in a market that has it and you feel that it's something you really want because you have a use case for it. But it's good to see that it's happening and it's less of a mess than 4G was, okay, so far.
Yeah,
so.
I completely agree. And anybody out there who might be looking at the 5G stuff with phone envy, you need only to remember what it was like adopting LTE. Because it took little by little, like you waded into the water. I think my first full 4G LTE phone was the Droid DNA, and it took a long time.
You were already on second or third gen modems by then.
Exactly.
You were lucky.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't even like touch any LTE phone up until that point, mainly because of my contract. But it probably helped because if I was an early adopter, I probably would have run into some issues at least at one point in time. So yeah, I mean the same rollout for LTE as we have for 5G right now. I think that might be the best way to handle it, at least for now.
Totally. Interestingly, my first LTE phone was a review unit from Verizon and HTC. It was the dreaded. This is hindsight is 2020, but at the time we loved it because it's like, oh my god, it's the first phone with LTE in the world, woohoo! But it was pretty terrible. The HTC Thunderbolt. I'm sure you've heard all about it before. It was basically the first gen modem, and if you turned on 4G on that phone, your battery would drop to 2 hours.
Whoa! Oh, see, there you go. That was one of the main problems. I just remember.
Like, I'm not even talking about half your battery life. I'm talking about going from using a phone for a day to using the phone for 2 hours.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
And everyone's looking at each other like, oh, it's fast though, right? It's fast.
Oh, it was fast. It was great. But man, the thing would get so hot in your hand. Oh. I probably lost like all my ability to reproduce using that phone.
Oh my God.
If I had any ability left to reproduce, that's gone now from that phone. I don't know. It was weird. We have one last story I want to quickly touch on.
I was about to say that wonderful.
Let's move on.
That was a wonderful joke, and you know what? On my podcast, that would have been my cue to go. And on that note, but no, thank God you have one more thing to talk about.
It's because I'm a pro. All right, so Pocket Lint posted a story about a Vivo patent that they unearthed somewhere, which is kind of crazy. If you click on the link, Josh, it's there's some illustrations of phones with reverse notches. You've probably saw this at CES. There were some laptops launched from Asus and eventually I think HP maybe? No, Lenovo that have a bit of a, like, instead of the notch encroaching in the display, the notch encroaches in the frame of the phone. So the frame of the laptop. So the frame is raised, basically there's a bit of a tab and it's conveniently located when the laptop is closed where you'd want to put your finger to open the lid. So it's actually a very clever idea.
Yeah.
And so what Vivo patented is something similar on phones though, so there's no need to lift a
lid or
a hinge or a lid here. But the idea is that instead of having the camera encroach on the display, why don't we just add a little bump on top, physically, like on the metal part of the phone, and have the cameras embedded in that. And then the best part is they have one with dual cameras that look like little antennas, like little ears. Basically.
No, that is the Disney phone. I'm calling it right now.
That totally Vivo, if you're listening, I know you're the craziest of them all. Please make it happen. I love you to bits. Signed, Miriam. There you go.
This kind of cuts the symmetry of a phone though, right? I can see a lot of people nitpicking this kind of thing. Because if it's only on the top, but there's nothing on the bottom that matches it, it's going to be like a deformed phone of some sort.
But it makes it look like a cartoon character, Josh.
Oh, I mean, I get that with the ears.
Look at it.
This other render, though, just looks like they didn't, cut the top.
Oh, no, they didn't cut. I mean, honestly, to me, it just feels like, I can totally see this flying in China again or in Asia in general. The kawaii is off the charts. It's so cute.
Yeah, so they would definitely, I could see that because there are enough people who put those big cases on their phones to just make them look like characters. I mean, those are ridiculous already. So this, I can see where this will come up. I don't think that anyone in the US would be down for it unless there was some sort of practical.
We're way too serious people for that.
Yeah, we take it too seriously.
We have to deal with a destructive regime day to day. We're oppressed. We can't deal with cuteness anymore, okay? We have bigger fish to fry.
Yes, it's the reality era,
Wow.
everybody.
I am so dark sometimes. So I encourage this phone to come so that I can buy it and surprise all my friends with cuteness.
I mean, a different phone, like something that is like unique and wholly different. Yeah, we need more of that, and we've been getting that. This might be going just a tad too far.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. Well, listen, we should wrap up. I think it's been a good show.
Yeah.
We've had lots of ups and downs. It's a very much a roller coaster. I hope you had Kleenex around and there wasn't too much crying while you were listening to this show. And too much laughter, hopefully, as well, because, you need to balance things out.
Yes.
Josh, you want to tell the folks in the universe where they can find you, all the things you do and your social, please?
Absolutely. My main work obviously is over on my YouTube channel. That would be youtube.com/Joshua Vergara. So that's just my full name, easy to put at the end of youtube.com. Now, as far as social media is concerned, I have the same handle for all of the networks, Twitter, even Facebook. You can find me there. And Instagram, that's at JVTechT. And here comes my catchphrase. At JVTechT, it's because I'm JV. I love tech and I love to drink me some tea. So those would be my social handles. I'm looking to ramp up a segment on my Instagram, IGTV in particular. I've done quite a few of these already, but I want to start getting back to doing them daily. A segment called Spill the Tea, where I just react to the day's news.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, where I just want to, and it's low production quality. It's like whatever phone's in my pocket, I use the front-facing camera. It's a vertical video anyway on IGTV, so just react to some news. I didn't do one today, but I will just put one thing out there we don't have to talk about. Obviously, it's just a hot take, a hot spilling some tea. Adobe Premiere Rush is finally out. So yes, I can't wait to use it. And
on your phone, folks.
Mm-hmm. So the reason why I'm really happy about that is because I could do Spill the Tea, record it all, and actually edit it on the same phone. I hope it's as good as I'm like projecting it to be.
Yeah, I'm stoked to try it out because I do a lot of my recording with phones, but then I go onto a computer to edit, and I'm just like, oh, I want a one-stop shop solution.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know where to find me. I'm at Tankgirl on Twitter and Instagram. That's TNKGRL, like the comic book character without the vowels. And that's where you'll find some thoughts. Please interact with me on Twitter. This is kind of the comment section is Twitter, really, right? And then Instagram is pretty photos of phones, of my travels, whatever. There's also, like Josh, I have a YouTube channel, which is my name. It's easy, youtube.com/Miriam Jouar. If you're wondering how to spell Miriam Jouar, just go to my Twitter and you'll find it spelled out there. No spaces. And I don't have quite the production level that Josh has on his YouTube. Really, it's tops. You should check it out. I will link your Honor 20 Pro video in the show description.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I think you'll find some unboxings and complimentary videos to this podcast. So just tell your friends, subscribe, like the videos, all that good stuff. Comment in the comment sections on YouTube, and then remember the podcast lives at mobiletechpodcast.com. So if you stumbled here by accident, like wondering where to find it, mobiletechpodcast.com. Tell your friends as well. Subscribe. You can also find me and my guests on all the platforms: Google, Apple, Pocket Cast, Overcast, TuneIn Radio, and even Spotify. So you have no excuse to not subscribe. I also want to thank our sponsor. We have a great sponsor here. It's audible.com. They've been with us for a long time and they've really helped support us. So if you're not an Audible customer yet and you're interested in listening to audiobooks, you want to try it out, there's a 30-day free trial offer in the show description. And I'll give you the URL in a second. But basically, Audible is the place to go for audiobooks. If you like to read, but maybe you're driving all day and you can't read a book on a Kindle or on paper, you can listen to them on audible.com. And so check it out. They have great selection. They have awesome writers who read their own books. Getting the author to read the book is really cool. So that's what Audible brings to the table. And if you want 30-day free trial, check out the link below in the show description. It's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. That's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. I want to thank Audible for being our sponsor. And if you want to support the show and you don't have Audible yet or know somebody who doesn't, please consider clicking through that link. And that's it, Josh. Thanks for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was super fun. And I'm really glad to be able
Yeah.
to do it remotely like this. So again, cheerio from London.
It's easy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely have you on again at some point. And maybe I'll be on your show at some point as well. You
Yeah,
never know.
I got a couple of them. So yeah, Pocket Now Weekly and
Sweet.
my own Tech and Tea podcast.
That's right. Let's make it happen. And you folks know there'll be another show next week, so stay tuned for that. And until then, cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.